AM 560, The Answer.
Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this hour of the Shaun Thompson Show is sponsored exclusively by DonleyAuctions.com. They need your guns. Sell for top dollar. DonleyAuctions.com.
I love America. I love the Constitution. I love the First Amendment. I want to carry and all else. I love property. And let me tell you something. If you care about your country, read Ludwig von Mises and the 6 lessons of the Austrian Economic School, motherfuckers.
From the streets of Melrose Park to the trading floor of the Merc, he's fought for every dollar he's ever earned. And now, with personal liberty and our system of capitalism under assault in America, he's here to seize back our rights from the government. With a cigar in one hand and a copy of the Declaration of Independence in the other, he's Shaun Thompson. And this is the Shaun Thompson Show.
Some folks are born made to wave the flag.
Greatest job in the world. I get to talk to people that I quietly admired for years, like my next guest. I remember the Wall Street Journal, Brazil articles, a lot of Brazil stuff back in the Wall Street Journal days. Then Forbes, senior contributor from 2011 to 23, currently an analyst at the Coalition for a Prosperous America. And he understands never to buy an EV, even if you're subsidized. Kenneth Rapoza, how are you, handsome?
Hey, Shaun, thanks a lot. Appreciate the intro.
Anytime. It's an interesting reality, and I feel vindicated every day. I mean it. I really, really do. And when you look at the trillions of dollars that had been absconded in the name of hampering America, you know, they call it alternative or green energy, but really it just weakened us, and it strengthened the enemies. It strengthened the adversaries, and they didn't pay attention to any of it. China is the number one perpetrator of that fraud, as I see it. But now, I was reading one of your articles. You know how much I love them. And am I wrong? Did I see it in the Daily Caller as well? Are you getting picked up by a bunch of outlets here? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, yes, I do. I write op-eds for the Daily Caller every now and then.
Oh, very, very good, very good. And there's some scuttlebutt. But see, here's the other thing. Are these the same guys that told me Jimmy Carter was a legitimate president? Because there's some scuttlebutt that somehow China gained an upper hand. I'm perplexed. How did they possibly gain an upper hand?
Oh, this is the op-ed you're talking about the Trump-Xi meeting.
Yes.
Right. So what we've heard, of course, that meeting is over now. It's been over for about 2 weeks now. But we were supposed to talk about this beforehand. I know I had to turn you down. I was busy. I'm sorry, Shaun. But I got to tell you,
Kenneth. Go ahead.
I beg your forgiveness. But what the thing is when that meeting was happening, of course, the press from New York to London was all saying that Trump is going there with his tail between his legs. She is the big power. The United States is a bum. Trump is a bum, and he's making the United States even more of a bum. And then you would read guys in, of course, the Council on Foreign Relations and others who were very good China hands, like I mentioned in the op-ed, a man named Stephen Roach, who knows China intimately, is a former Morgan Stanley Asia chairman, saying that China has the upper hand. And their argument, and I kind of go against their argument, and to put it quickly to you, is that China is gaining worldwide. Obviously, China is the rising power, and other countries rely on China increasingly and want to do business with China. And China is seen, thanks to the Iran war, is seen as the stable, pro-business partner, where the United States, where the West, led by the U.S., is seen more as the punitive, unstable partner. Okay, but as far as the upper hand goes, look at China's geography. Look what it's surrounded by. It's got It wants to take Taiwan. Wants Taiwan to be part of the mainland again. That's a pressure point for them, because the Taiwanese, when you look at the polls, they are happy with the relationship as it is now. They want to be independent. They don't want to be part of the CCP. Yes. They have neighbors like South Korea. South Korea is closer to the United States than it is to China. Japan, closer to the United States than it is to China. India, neutral, but a very big ally of the United States. So China's neighborhood is more connected to the U.S., despite being on the other side of the ocean, than our neighborhoods, we're very friendly with Mexico. Mexican government, you can always count on the Mexican government to cooperate with whoever the president is. If the president of the United States says, open the border, Mexico will gladly open it and send people through. If the United States government says, close the border, the Mexicans will close the border. They cooperate. Despite arguments we have with the European Union, we still are friendly with the EU, and the EU is moving closer in alignment with the United States on our international trade policy. So as far as the upper hand goes, the United States has a lot more allies, stronger ones, than China has.
And what I'm loving is the new shift, right? Because, I learned this as a kid, right? And I used to learn how to trade from old traders. Rather than learning out of textbooks the way people do in college, I wanted to do it from the guys that were very successful at it. And I will never forget this. It was a very smart man, and we were standing in the pork belly pit at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and we were talking about the price of bellies and all the price in the economy. And this is like the late 80s, all right? Reagan's on his way out. I'm new to the business. And one of the guys I was talking to was Cadillac Jack Schulte and another guy who I loved. And, they said to me, we're all really oil traders. It's always about oil. Everything is oil. And, as a kid, and you hear that, you're like, well, wait a minute, aren't we in the pork belly? And over there's the live cattle. And it's always the oil. Oil is essential in every aspect of every single commodity. And when I look at how Trump has realigned everything when it comes to what I believe is a fraud in the Middle East oil, we never needed their oil. It was only through our own regulations and bad policies we restricted our own. And you look at Mexico and Canada, big reason that they're our allies is because it's regulated that we must import oil. It's in the regulations. We don't have to, but we must because of law, right? So we import 40% of oil that we refine. Out of that 40%, Canada is the bulk of it. Mexico is the minor holder. So we've got this corporatism that is cooked in to our policies. And then comes the real estate developer, who his mother should have named him Chuck because he does not give, and you understand what I mean. And he is changing it all. And he's making us the biggest producers domestically and now national exporters. And all of it from China to Iran. Where are these tankers going? They're going to the now Gulf of America. I think he is changing the schematic of the most important product in the universe, and the beginning is just now. So when I see numbers of unemployment that come out or inflation, we know, and you and I know, it's because you created $30 trillion in 17 years. We're lucky it's not the Weimar Republic. But if he pulls off this realignment, if he renegotiates the fact that we are now the big dog, we were the big dog, but we pretended we were. We still enriched all these other enemies. If he changes all of that, this could be an economic revival, the likes of which nobody can even comprehend at this point.
Oh, I agree with what you're saying. And the Iran war, part of it, there's a lot of ways you could look at the Iran war through the Israel lens, and you could look at it through, the Cold War 2.0 lens, which is the strategic battle with China, right?
Yes.
But part of that, if you're looking at it through that lens, then part of that is how do you de-risk Asia from Hormuz? How do I de-risk those allies in the Gulf from Asia? So
Venezuela.
I could get rid of I all of a sudden I'd become a big. I have Venezuela on my side now. They're an ally with the United States now. I become a shipper of LNG or gasoline to Europe. More increase. Now, of course, that's not a perfect plan, right? Because the Japanese and the South Koreans are closer to Russia, right? And they could have a problem with the United States. They could have a pricing problem. They could be aggravated with the way things are going in Hormuz, and they could set contracts with the Russians. But I'm not privy to what Russia is doing with the Koreans and how they're talking with them, what they're offering them. But they could undercut the United States that way. But for sure, as you said, and we have in November, if you remember, we had the national security strategy of the United States, the revival of the Monroe Doctrine, right? And the Trump corollary of that Monroe Doctrine was that we're going to secure peace in the hemisphere because we're going to turn this hemisphere into a commodities supergiant, right?
Yes,
Whether that means critical metals to make semiconductors for AI and so on. You know how Washington loves that stuff, and the tech bros all love that. Or oil and gas. So, that's the switch. And in order to do that, you have to weaken the Gulf, right? We can at least Iran. And look at what happened with Qatar. Because I think it was Qatar. They said that they're going to leave OPEC, for example. So now they can produce as much oil and gas as they want to, without having to stay within the cartel limits. So we're seeing a shift, and I think it's as you said. Ideally the Americas would be a huge commodity source, not only for the world but for ourselves, right? Because we don't want to be having all this stuff, pulling it out of the ground and giving it to the Europeans at a premium, and then we can't have it because that's not going to do us any good.
And there's an interesting reality that is unlike anything before. And we've seen this throughout time, and I don't care who's in office. If there seems to be tension, all of a sudden the American president is a coward. They never leave. What I love about the guy is he does what I would do, what you would do, what any person would do. Am I having a problem? Let me go knock on the door. I want to come and talk to you right now. Whether it's Putin, whether it's Xi Jinping, whether it's the North Korean rocket man, no matter who it is, that's the difference. And I believe that society is getting an appetite for this. And if he pulls it off and threads the needle, and by threading the needle, I understand it's still complex, but I couldn't help but notice the difference in the tone of the Chinese Communist Party, the difference in the tone of Russia, which all of a sudden isn't getting half the attention it got. The whole fraud of Joe Biden and the Ukrainian war, all the Soviet Union, as far as I'm concerned, that was pick a corrupt area as I look at it. I'm not saying Russia's less corrupt or one thing's for sure, but we knew the collusion and corruption with the Ukrainian government and the American politicians for decades, since the fall of the Iron Curtain. If Trump can turn an ally or an enemy into an ally, whether it's Xi Jinping or Putin or both, now you rewrite everything, the whole script of all of the spending, of all of the foreign policy money that we now know is being stolen. I still have yet to get an answer. Who were the loan guarantees that Joe Biden leveraged to not have the investigator go after his son? Who got the money loan guarantees? You know how many billions, hundreds of billions have been robbed from American foreign policy, and we just pretend it's business as usual? I think he's really changing the structure of what we're used to.
Yes, that story is not one I followed, but I could tell you that if that ever does come out, and we've heard hints of Trump talking about stuff like this, right? Trump's been going every now and then when you get disgusted by Trump, he comes up with something against his enemies. You go, yes, what took him so long? And it's, for example, even something as simple as recently, I think the DOJ is going after Reid Hoffman, who funded that woman's lawsuit against Trump. I can't think of her name, the woman who claims
Jean
Trump.
Carroll, and her cat
that
is named
lady,
Nipples.
right? That lady. It's like, what took so long? All the Trump fans are saying, let's bankrupt this woman, for crying out loud. She's been such a thorn on everybody's side. Her narrative was just so divisive. And so again, we don't know what's going to happen with the Iran war. And as far as what you said about China, look, we're in the middle of what many call Cold War 2.0, right? China is a strategic rival. There's going to be a managed trade between the two countries and a managed strategic pivot, in the sense of we're going to make sure that we can get along, but we're going to set limits with the relationship so that it doesn't get kinetic. Many people in the United States would be fine with that, unfortunately. But we're going to have to see how that plays out. I don't think Xi Jinping I don't think China is going to be our, quote unquote friend. And I'll tell you this, Shaun, actually, let me tell you, one of the best things for the United States right now is Xi Jinping. Because if Xi Jinping in China had a Japanese-style government, imagine if China was run like Japan. Japan's our best friend. Japan's one of our best allies, them and South Koreans. They certainly are in Asia. They're our best allies and most important ones. Imagine China led by someone like that we all get along with. Well, it would be, let's bygones be bygones. It's a new country. It's a new day. And you would just have what Ross Perot talked about in the 90s, the great big sucking sound of manufacturing, not only manufacturing, but capital investment just going to Asia. And the United States would just become, it would just look, you have wage levels and, everything would be on par basically with, I would say Mexico,
Exactly.
You would look more like the rest of the Americas over time than the standout within the Americas that we are today.
So the other thing to keep in mind is that we have a real dichotomy between states that are run by the Democrat mafia and other states. You look at this boom belt that popped up out of nowhere. It's only because of Trump. 11 states, 70% of American GDP, massive growth. The trillions of dollars that are coming back are always going to the right. They call it the right to work states. I call it the non-union mafia states. And it's fascinating to watch the difference in the economies of the states. And he gets no credit for this because they bulk the cost of bad states, bad governance, money that's lost and stolen into the broader economic numbers. But when I look at the government employees, the federal government employees has never been this low since 1966. That's what I voted for. That's what I wanted. Less government employees like the Soviet Union, more private growth. That's what we're getting, isn't it?
Yes, that is definitely what we're getting, and unfortunately for those government employees, most people don't cry for them. We certainly don't cry for the USAID workers, and despite the fact that New York Times and others have tried very hard to make us all feel terrible about USAID going kaput. But the smaller, and to keep it simple, like Econ 101, as I'm sure all your listeners know, right, is the smaller the government, the less money to the government that I have to pay. And when we're always talking about the cost of living, one of the things people don't always talk about, so in the news they talk about the rising cost of beef or the rising cost of gasoline, but even though taxes have leveled off, but there's a lot of fees and other things involved at the state level that make life very expensive. And so it's not necessarily the fact that ground beef costs $8 a pound and maybe 2 years ago it cost $6, but that you're paying more for insurance, you're paying more for taxes on your house, you're paying more for this. And these things are rarely discussed when you talk about inflation. And these things are costly because our governments, our states are bankrupt, especially blue states, or because the states are getting larger and they're using money for other things like Leering centers if you're from Minneapolis, for example. So these are all things that weigh on us all, even though we can't really put words to it because we're not all political machines and animals where we know what's going on 24 hours a day. But these things weigh on us more than, let's say, the cost of beef or even the cost of gasoline, which of course is an annoyance because we use it every day.
But no other president would have been able to expose the difference in the cost of those states like Donald Trump did. It is fascinating and amazing to see these Democrat states. I don't care. In Illinois, gas is $1 more than it is just one state away. It's $1.30 more than it is 4 states away. So Illinois is starting to wake up. New York is waking up. California politicians are now running on the fact these are Democrats that destroyed your quality of life and destroy your dollar. I think this is really the time of a capitalist American business revitalization domestically, and it also is foreign. And as much as he's rewriting the way in which things work, he's making even economists realize, well, wait a minute, this is kind of working. And I love what he's doing. I really do. I understand the stock market. Not everybody's in it. But did you ever think you'd see a stock market like this, an S&P 500 like this, a NASDAQ, a Russell, and all the rest of it?
Well, I would say most people are in it, especially if they have a 401k. Any kind of job today offers you a 401k. You know what I mean? Anybody can just put $100 a month in an S&P index. I mean, I don't want to sound like Kevin O'Leary, who talks about not eating lunch and giving money to the S&P. But yes, Americans should learn more about how to save $50 a month instead of spending $50 a month on Starbucks, for example. It goes a long way. It adds up quick. But yes, I'm an investor, so I love the market going up, of course, especially when I look at gasoline prices going up and all the other items I mentioned to you in the conversation of going up. I go, well, at least in the worst case scenario, if I need $1,000, I could sell some shares here and pay this off because everything is so expensive. But yes, everyone loves the market going up. But of course, the market is one thing. Americans, by and large, even if you're in the market, I don't care if my 401k is up 30%. I'm not retired. I need to work. I'm not going to sell part of my 401k to pay bills, right? So, that's a nice measure for people who are day traders. But overall, people want to have jobs. They want to have,
if
cost of living stabilized. Those are the things that matter. And you're not getting that in the blue cities, in the blue states, as you say, Shaun. I know. No. You're not getting it there. That's the place where they complain about the cost of living. The Democrats, they're the ones who complain about it because I think they could beat up Trump on that. And there's some legitimacy to that. But they're the ones who are the most expensive. It's the most expensive in all the blue cities and states. They're the ones where you can't afford to live.
And notice all this fraud where it thrives. You know, there was a story with that kid who I loved. They had Nick Shirley and the older guy. I forget his name, the older guy. And they're exposing one of these frauds in Minnesota. And it was established in 1999, and nobody was ever there. 1999. They've been stealing millions for nearly 30 years, 27 years, and now it gets exposed. I'm telling you, I'm very bullish. So that's the long story and the short of it, and I'm curious to know. I'm very bullish on the prosperity of America in the future. I think this is the very beginning, but I do not represent prosperous America. What do you think?
Well, I read today, and I agree with what I read, and I'll tell you what it was, that look at all the other countries in the world. You're talking about investing. If you're going to put money to work, well, forget putting money to work. Where would you want to look for a job, right? And where do you see growing? Do you see France growing? Do you see the UK growing? You know, well, you're not going to move to China because you're not, unless you're Chinese and speak Chinese, you're not moving to China, right?
Yeah,
you're going to go to Thailand and work where in the Thailand? You're going to work in a bar somewhere. So where's the place? We are the place. We are it. It's not Canada. It's not Mexico. It's right here. We're the place.
Exactly. And as far as Kamala Harris goes, she could definitely go to Thailand and work in some sailor on a hump joint. Kenneth Rapoza, I love the product. More importantly, prosperousamerica.org is the place to see it. Thank you for always making time for me, brother. I appreciate you.
My pleasure. Have a good night.
You too. We'll be back with your calls and comments.
Marxists, socialists, and communists are not welcome on the Shaun Thompson Show on AM 560.